शुक्लांबरधरं विष्णुं शशिवर्णं चतुर्भुजं प्रसन्नवदनं ध्यायेत् सर्वविघ्नोपशान्तये। ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः। अगजानन पद्मार्कं गजाननमहर्निशम् अनेकदन्तं भक्तानाम् एकदन्तमुपास्महे। श्रीमहागणपतये नमः। गुरवे सर्वलोकानां विषजे भवरोगिणां निधये सर्वविद्यानां श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। अस्मद्गुरुचरणारविन्दाभ्यां नमः। वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुं। ज्ञानानन्दमयं देवं निर्मलस्फटिकाकृतिम् आधारं सर्वविद्यानां श्रीहयग्रीवमुपास्महे। श्रीहयग्रीवमूर्तये नमः। सरस्वती नमस्तुभ्यं वरदे कामरूपिणि विद्यारम्भं करिष्यामि सिद्धिर्भवतु मे सदा। श्रीमहासरस्वत्यै नमः। उमाकोमलहस्ताब्जसम्भावितललाटकं हिरण्यकुण्डलं वन्दे कुमारं पुष्करस्रजं। வெற்றிவேல் முருகனுக்கு ஹரஹரோஹரா. लोकवीर्यं महापूज्यं सर्वरक्षाकरं विभुं पार्वती हृदयानन्दं शास्तारं प्रणमाम्यहं। स्वामिये शरणमय्यप्पा। वागर्ताविव सम्पृक्तौ वागर्तप्रतिपत्तये जगतः पितरौ वन्दे पार्वती परमेश्वरौ। श्रीपार्वती परमेश्वराभ्यां नमः। कोमलं कूजयन् वेणुं श्यामलोऽयं कुमारकः वेदवेद्यं परब्रह्मा तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। अस्मद्गुरुचरणारविन्दाभ्यां नमः। श्रीकृष्ण गोविन्द हरे मुरारे श्रीनाथ नारायण वासुदेव। श्रीकृष्ण गोविन्द हरे मुरारे श्रीनाथ नारायण वासुदेव। श्रीकृष्ण गोविन्द हरे मुरारे श्रीनाथ नारायण वासुदेव। पीताम्बरं करविराजितचक्रशङ्खकौमोदकी सरसिजं करुणासमुद्रं राधासहायम् अतिसुन्दरमन्दहासं वातालयेशम् अनिशं हृदि भावयामि। कृष्णो रक्षतु मां चराचरगुरुः कृष्णं नमस्ये सदा। कृष्णेनैव सुरक्षितोऽहमसकृत् कृष्णाय दत्तं मनः। कृष्णादेव समुद्भवो मम विभो कृष्णस्य दासोऽस्म्यहं। कृष्णे भक्तिरचञ्चलास्तु भगवन् हे कृष्ण तुभ्यं नमः। श्रीगुरुवायूरप्पा शरणं नम्राणां सन्निधत्ते सततमपि पुरस्तैरणभ्यर्थितानपि आर्तान् कामानजस्रं वितरति परमानन्दसान्द्रां गतिं च। इत्थं निःशेषलभ्यो निरवधिकफलः पारिजातो हरे त्वं क्षुद्रं तं चक्रवाटी द्रुममभिलषति व्यर्थमर्त्यव्रजोऽयं। श्रीगुरुवायूरप्पा शरणं श्रीभट्टपादम् अनिशं हृदि भावयामि। वंशी विभूषितकरात् नवनीरदाभात् पीताम्बरात् अरुणबिम्बफलादरोष्णात् पूर्णेन्दुसुन्दरमुखात् अरविन्दनेत्रात् कृष्णात् परं किमपि तत्त्वमहं न जाने। കൈരണ്ടും കൂപ്പി ഞാൻ വീണ്ടുമീറക്കുന്നു നീരജലോചന നിന്നോടായി. ഇതിനു മഞ്ഞനെ കുമ്പിടേണ്ടാത്തോരു രീതിയിൽ നീ എന്നെ പാലിക്കുന്നായി. കൃഷ്ണ ഹരേ ജയ കൃഷ്ണ ഹരേ ജയ Krishna Hare Jaya Krishna Hare. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the class. So we just start off with 94 itself. We'll try to wrap it up, 94 and a little bit of 95 as well today. So, all right. So maybe Srividya, you can be a student, and Padmangar, you can be student first. So we'll start with the 94 stanza 4. That's where we finished stanza 3 last time. So stanza 4 this time. त्वल्लोकाद् अन्यलोकः क्वनु भयरहितो यत्परार्धद्वयान्ते त्वद्भीतः सत्यलोकेऽपि न सुखवसतिः पद्मभूः पद्मनाभ। Evam bhave tvadarmarchita bahutamasan ka katha narakanam tanme tvam chindi bandham Bharada kripana bandho kripa pura sindho. Just touch on meaning very quickly on this. He says, O Padmanabha means the one from whose navel the lotus actually comes up. He says, there's no other world which is, where there's no fear other than your own world, which is Vaikuntham. Other than that, every other world, the 14 worlds in the Brahmandam, there is always going to be fear. People are always going to be afraid of something. He says, why Kakata Narakana? What to talk about mere mortals like us? Even in Satyaloka, Brahma is bound, right? He has Dvipararda after his 100 years. Even Brahma's life comes to an end, or his tenure is done, right? So there's no place which is completely free of fear except your Vaikuntham, right? So in spite of that, he says, what about the normal mortals who continue to accumulate sins, right, without any fear? Although we should all be fearful of all the sins we're accumulating, we continue to do without, not have any fear at all of this. So he says, Oh, Kripana Bhandho, Kripa Pura Sindhu. He says, oh, person who takes care of all the, the Kripana Bandhu, one who gives boons and everything, one who's full of mercy, says, please cut off all this bondage I'm having because of which I'm accumulating sins. Right? So it's kind of like a prayer here saying, please eradicate all the bondage and ties I have to all these senses so I don't continue to accumulate sins and then I'm fearful of the sins I'm accumulating, right? So, 12 lokad anya lokaha. You can kind of break it at that. 12 lokad anya lokaha. Put a ih sound to join. Anya lokah. Kwanu bhaya rahito, comma. Yet parardha dvayante, comma. Tvat bhitas satyalokepi, comma. Na sukha vasatihi. Put a f, sukha vasatif. Padmabhuhu. Put a f again. Padmabhuf. Padmanabha. त्वल्लोकाद् अन्यलोकः क्वनु भयरहितो यत्परार्धद्वयान्ते त्वद्भीतः सत्यलोकेऽपि न सुखवसतिः पद्मभूः पद्मनाभ. Shivdevi wants to go.
त्वल्लोकात् अन्यलोकः क्वनु भयरहितो यत्परार्धद्वयान्ते त्वद्भीतः सत्यलोकेऽपि न सुखवसतिः पद्मभूः पद्मनाभ. त्वल्लोकात् अन्यलोकः क्वनु भयरहितो यत्परार्धद्वयान्ते त्वद्भीतः सत्यलोकेऽपि न सुखवसतिः पद्मभूतः पद्मनाभ.
त्वल्लोकाद् अन्यलोकः क्वनुभयरहितो यत्पदार्थद्वयान्ते त्वद्भीतः सत्यलोकेऽपि न सुखवसतिः पद्मभूः पद्मनाभ. त्वल्लोकाद् अन्यलोकः क्वनुभयरहितो यत्पदार्थद्वयान्ते त्वद्भीतः सत्यलोकेऽपि न सुखवसतिः पद्मभूः पद्मनाभ.
एवं भावे त्वधर्मार्जित बहु तमसां, कॉमा, का कथा नारकानां, कॉमा, तन्मे त्वं छिन्दी बन्धं, कॉमा, वरद कृपण बन्धो कृपा पूर सिन्धो. एवं भाति त्वधर्मार्जित बहुतमसां का कथा नारकाणां तन्मे त्वं छिन्धि बन्धं वरद कृपण बन्धो कृपा पूर सिन्धो.
एवं भावे त्वद्धर्मार्जित बहुदमसां कागधा नारकाणां तन्मे त्वं छिन्धि बन्धं वरद कृपणबन्धो कृपापूर सिन्धो. एवं भावे त्वधर्मार्जित बहुदमसां कागधा नारकाणां तन्मे त्वं छिन्धि बन्धं वरद कृपणबन्धो कृपापूर सिन्धो.
एवं भावे त्वधर्मार्जित बहुतमसां काकदा नारकाणां तन्मे त्वं छिन्धि बन्धं वरद कृपण बन्धो कृपापूर सिन्धो. एवं भावे त्वधर्मार्चित बहुतमसां काकदानारकाणां तन्मे त्वं चिन्धि बन्धं वरद कृपण बन्धो कृपापूरसिन्धो.
Stanza 5. याथार्त्या त्वन्मयस्यैव हि मम न विभो वस्तुतो बन्धमोक्षौ माया विद्यातनुभ्यां तव तु विरचितौ स्वप्नबोधोपमौ तौ भद्दे जीवद्विमुक्तिं गतवति च भिदा तावदेको भुङ्क्ते देहद्रुमस्थो विषयफलरसान्नापरो निर्व्यथात्मा. So continue saying, so for enlightenment, right? So what is the definition of enlightenment? Enlightenment here is that is different from liberation, because liberation, you're getting liberated and you're merging into the supreme soul. Enlightenment is coming to the realization, right? So he says, in reality, he says, I am no different than you, O Paramatma. There's actually no difference between Brahman and us. But he says the main aspect is because of the lack of knowledge that we both are the same, and because of the ignorance I have that I am actually different from you, I am now pursuing a completely different reality than what is truly there. Now, it's easy to say this in words, but very difficult to comprehend it, because majority of us are not enlightened, right? Once we are enlightened, then you'll be able to understand it. That's what he says. So he says, so he says, it's in reality, we both are the same, but it is like a state of waking and dreaming, where in your dream you think something is real, but when you wake up, you come to the realization that was not real. Similarly, when you get enlightened, then you realize that the two of them are the same and there's no difference. And the only difference, he says, between the enlightened being and the non-enlightened being is a non-enlightened being like us thinks we are the body, enjoys the material senses, the sense experience which comes from all of our senses, and the enlightened being realizes that it is not me, so it does not connect itself to any of the senses. So he says, again, bless me so that I come to that state of enlightenment. So yatarthyat, a little bit of a tongue twister at the beginning there. Yatarthyat twan mayasyaiva hi mama na vibho, comma, vastuto bandha mokshau, comma, maya vidya tanubhyam, comma, tavatu virachitau swapna bodhopamautau. यातार्त्यात्त्वन्मयस्यैव हि मम न विभो वस्तुतो बन्धमोक्षौ माया विद्यातनुभ्यां तव तु विरचितौ स्वप्नबोधोपमौ तौ. Mr. Shividya, you're on mute. Okay, well, Padmagar, you continue.
Yeah. Okay, Nandi. Yadathyat tanmayasya हि मम न विभो वस्तुतो बन्धमोक्षौ माया विद्यातनुभ्यां तव तु विरचितौ स्वप्नबोधोपमौ तौ. यादाध्यात् तन्मयस्यैव हि मम न विभो वस्तुतो बन्धमोक्षौ माया विद्यातनुभ्यां तव तु विरचितौ स्वप्नबोधोपमौ तौ.
Shividya back. Shividya, can you able to unmute yourself?
Yes, I had an intermittent problem, internet connection. So I'm back.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Shividya. Are you able to chant or not able to?
No, I can go ahead.
Okay, yeah. I don't know if you missed the first two lines of the fifth stanza we did.
Okay. Yadhyartyat tvanmayasयैव हि मम न विभो वस्तुतो बन्धमोक्षौ माया विद्यादनुभ्यां तव तु विरचितौ स्वप्नबोधे भवौ तौ.
So in the first line after Vibho, there was a pause in the first line, and second line after Tanubhyam. Okay.
Oh. You want me to read again?
Yeah, one more time.
One time?
Yep.
यादात्यात् त्वन्मयस्यैव हि मम न विभो वस्तुतो बन्धमोक्षौ माया विद्यादनुभ्यां धवतु विरचितौ स्वप्नबोधेपमौतौ.
स्वप्नबोधोपमौतौ. Last word.
Okay. स्वप्नबोधोपमौतौ.
बद्धे जीवत् विमुक्तिं गतवति च बिदा, कॉमा, तावती तावदेको, कॉमा, भुङ्क्ते देह द्रुमस्थो, कॉमा, विषय फल रसान्नापरो निर्व्यथात्मा. बद्धे जीवद्विमुक्तिं गतवति च भिदा, तावती तावदेको, भुङ्क्ते देहद्रुमस्थो विषय फल रसान्नापरो निर्व्यथात्मा.
बद्धे जीवद्विमुक्तिं गतवति च बिता धावति धावतेगो पुङ्क्ते देहद्रुमस्थो विषयफलरसान् नापरो निर्व्यथात्मा. बद्धे जीवद्विमुक्तिं गतवति च बिता धावति धावतेगो पुङ्क्ते देहद्रुमस्थो विषयफलरसान् नापरो निर्व्यथात्मा.
बद्धे जीवद्विमुक्तिं गतवति च भिथा तावती तावदेको भुङ्क्ते देहद्रुमस्थो रसान्नापरो निर्व्यथात्मा. बद्धे जीवद्विमुक्तिं गतवति च भिथा तावती तावदेको भुङ्क्ते देहद्रुमस्थो रसान्नापरो निर्व्यथात्मा.
Stanza 6. जीवन्मुक्तत्वमेवं विदमिति वचसा किं फलं दूरदूरे, तन्नामाशुद्धबुद्धेः न च लघुमनसः शोधनं भक्तितोऽन्यत्. तन्मे विष्णो कृषिष्ठाः त्वयि कृतसकलप्रार्पणं भक्तिभारं, येन स्यां मंशु किञ्चित् गुरुवचनमिलत्वत्प्रबोधस्त्वदात्मा. So kind of the realization that we spoke in the 5th stanza, right? Coming to the realization, he says, for a normal soul, which is actually bound by what we are all bound by, right? By the mind and all the senses. You can, all of these are just words, which is very true, right? Because we can always say you come to the realization, but all of these are just words unless you actually experience it, unless you can truly comprehend it. So he says this concept that we are talking about is very far-fetched for a mind which is not ready for it. And that mind, what he says is that mind is not a pure mind. So first he says you have to get purity of mind, which he says only comes from actually being completely devoted to you, O Vishnu. I have to be completely devoted. So please bring on to me that complete devotion, so I get clarity of mind, and then I'm able to surrender all these actions, everything to you. So I'm completely clean of this. Then it is possible for us to come to that realization, right? Come to that state of enlightenment. And he says, is through devotion and also guidance from a guru and everybody else. He says, please, with all of that, may I actually achieve oneness with you. So this is also kind of like a continuation of the previous prayer, right, that he's doing. So, Jivan Mukta Twamevam Vidhamiti Vachasa Kim Phalam Dura Dure. So that line is continuous, comma at the end. Tanna Mashuddha Buddhehe. So put a visarga and comma, Buddhehe. Next line, on top of that na, there is a ir that goes away. Nacha lagu manasash shodhanam bhakti tonyate. Jivan muktatvamevam vidhamiti vachasa kim phalam dura dure, tanha ma shuddha buddhehe nacha lagu manasash shodhanam bhakti tonyate.
जीवन्मुक्तत्वमेवं विधमिति वचसा किं बलं दूरदूरे तन्नामाशुद्धबुद्धेः न च लघु मनसः शोधनं भक्तिधोन्यन्. भक्तिधोन्यत्. जीवन्मुक्तत्वमेवं विधमिति वचसा किं बलं दूरदूरे तन्नामाशुद्धबुद्धेः न च लघु मनसः शोधनं भक्तिधोन्यत्.
जीवन जीवन्मुक्त मुक्त sorry जीवन्मुक्तत्वमेवं विधमिति वचसा किं फलं दूरे तन्नामा शुद्धबुद्धेः न मनसः शोधनं भक्तितोऽन्यत् जीवन्मुक्तत्वमेवं विधमिति वचसा किं फलं दूरे तन्नामा शुद्धबुद्धेः न मनसः शोधनं भक्तितोऽन्यत्.
Padmaguru, that first line after Dura Dure, there is a comma. Okay, I felt like you said the second line together. Yeah. There is a comma or pause after the first line. Okay.
Yeah.
Tanme Vishnu Krishishtaha. So that is there. Put a visarga comma. Krishishtaha. Tvayi Krita Sakala Prarpanam Bhakti Bharam, comma. Yena Syam Mangshu Kinchit Guru Vachana Milat Tvat Prabodhas Twadhatma. It's a continuous line, easy to break, but Tanhe Vishnu Krishishtaha Tvai Krita Sakala Prarpanam Bhakti Bharam Yena Syam Mangshu Kinchit Guru Vachana Milat Tvat Prabodhas Twadatma.
तन्मे विष्णु गृहीष्टाः त्वयि कृतसकलप्रार्पणं भक्तिभारं येन श्यामंशु किञ्चित् गुरुवचनमिलत् त्वत्प्रबोधस्त्वदात्मा तन्मे विष्णु गृहीष्टाः त्वयि कृतसकलप्रार्पणं भक्तिभारं येन श्यामंशु किञ्चित् गुरुवचनमिलत् त्वत्प्रबोधस्त्वदात्मा
तन्मे विष्णु कृशिष्टाः त्वयि कृतसकलप्रार्पणं भक्तिभारं येन स्यां मंशु किञ्चिद् गुरुवचनमिलत्वत्प्रबोधस्त्वदात्मा
Prabodhastvadatma. Last word.
प्रबोधस् okay. तन्मे विष्णु कृशिष्टाः त्वयि कृतसकलप्रार्पणं भक्तिभारं येन स्यां मंशु किञ्चिद् गुरुवचनमिलत्वत्प्रबोधास्त्वदात्मा.
Stanzas. शब्द ब्रह्मण्यपीह प्रयतित मनसः त्वां न जानन्ति केचित् कष्टं वन्द्यश्रमास्ते चिरतिरमिह गां बिभ्रते निष्प्रसूतिं यस्यां विश्वाभिरामाः सकलमलहरा दिव्यलीलावताराः सच्चित् सान्द्रं च रूपं तव न निगदितं तां न वाचं भ्रियासम्. Kind of continuing with that, saying that first, what is the state of enlightenment? How do you get to the state of enlightenment? By getting a purity of mind. Then here he says, but the other approach, and we're going to talk a little bit of this, I'll talk about it in the 95th Dasakam also. He says the people who just blindly follow the rituals or who blindly follow the Vedas, he says the problem with this is they don't understand who you truly are, because you're just doing it as an action, as a karma. He says only by truly understanding who you are, and that could mean like what we're doing in Anand, which is understanding who the Lord is, what the activities are, what is just talking about him and personifying him. He says is the easiest way for one to actually attain pure devotion, because otherwise it's very difficult to connect your mind to something which is very abstract, right? So he says, so may I, always, may I never say anything. So on this, the example comparison he gives here is, it's like having a cow. So just studying the Vedas, he says, it's like having a cow which does not produce calf. Because the cow is useful up to a particular point, but you really want that cow to produce a calf and then that to continue, right? The essence of that doesn't come out. So that's what he's saying, that the main essence of this is to understand who you really are and talk about all your activities. He says, may I always be thinking about you and studying or talking about you, talking about your activities to truly understand your pure form as well. So may I never say anything which doesn't talk about you, right? That's the prayer here. Shabda Brahmanya Piha Prayathitha Manasaha. So that is there, remove it, put a visarga comma, Manasaha. Tvam na jananti kechit, comma, Kashtam Vandya Shramasthe, comma, चिरतरमिह गां बिभ्रते निष्प्रसूतिम् शब्दब्रह्मण्यपीह प्रयतितमनसः त्वां न जानन्ति केचित् कष्टं वन्द्यश्रमास्ते चिरतरमिह गां बिभ्रते निष्प्रसूतिम्
शब्दब्रह्मण्यपीह प्रियदितमनसः त्वां न जानन्ति केचित् कष्टं वन्द्यश्रमास्ते चिरतरमिह गां बिभ्रते निष्प्रसूतिम्
the first line is prayatita.
Okay. शब्दब्रह्मण्यपीह प्रियदितमनसः त्वां न जानन्ति केचित् कष्टं वन्द्यश्रमास्ते चिरतरमिह गां बिभ्रते निष्प्रसूतिम्
शब्दब्रह्मण्यपीह प्रयतितमनसः त्वां न जानन्ति केचित् कष्टं वन्द्यश्रमास्ते चिरतरमिह गां बिभ्रते निष्प्रसूतिम् शब्दब्रह्मण्यपीह प्रयतितमनसः त्वां न जानन्ति केचित् कष्टं वन्द्यश्रमास्ते चिरतरमिह गां बिभ्रते निष्प्रसूतिम्
Yasyam Vishwabhiramaha. So that is there. Remove it. Visarga comma. Vishwabhiramaha. Sakala Malahara Divya Leelavatharaha, comma. Sachit Sandram Charupam, comma. Tava na Nigatitam Tam na Vacham Bhriyasam. Yasyam Vishwabhiramaha Sakala Malahara Divya Leelavatharaha Sachit Sandram Charupam Tavana Nigaditam Tamna Vacham Bhriyasam.
यस्यां विश्वाभिरामाः सकलमलहरा. There is a visarga there?
Visarga illa. If you stop it only, it's there. Otherwise, the da is coming, there will be no visarga. You can remove it off if you have it.
Okay. Yasyam Vishwabhiramaha Sakalamalahara Divya Leelavataraha Sachit Sandram Charupam Tavana Nigaditam Tamna Vacham Priyasam. Yasyam Vishwabhiramaha Sakalamalahara Divya Leelavataraha Sachit Sandram Charupam Tavana Nikaditam Damna Vacham Briyasam.
यस्यां विश्वाभिरामाः सकलमलहरा दिव्यलीलावताराः सच्चित्सान्द्रं च रूपं तव न निगदितं तां न वाचं प्रियासम् यस्यां विश्वाभिरामाः सकलमलहरा दिव्यलीलावताराः सच्चित्सान्द्रं च रूपं तव न निगदितं तां न वाचं प्रियासम्.
That's 8. Yo yabhan yadrusho va tvamiti kimapi naivavagacchami bhumanne evan chananya bhavaha tvadanubhajaname vadriye chaidyavairin twallinghanam twadangri priyajana sadasam darshana sparshanadihi bhuyan me tvatprapuja natinuti guna karmanu kirtyadharopi. This is now when we continue to kind of, what do you call, think of the meditation, everything. So he says, I have no knowledge of all the forms that you have, all your glories and actions, because we said we'll do that. But he says, I don't have all of that information because there's so many avatars, so many glories. It cannot be easily condensed, right? Because there's so many things that you have done. He says, however, but one thing which, please bless me, which I always continue to do is always continue to worship you. So that should not change, right? Even though I may not fully comprehend your scope, your magnitude, may I always continue to worship you. And the easiest one, which Bhattacharya is doing a very nice prayer here for everybody, is saying, please bless me so that at a minimum, I get to see your images, your form. That's number one. and I'm actually able to touch, right? Touch your, either if I'm not able to touch the idol, which we cannot, at least touch the feet of people who are completely devoted to you. Because, like, we have said several times, Narayana is Bhakta Dasaha. So being friend or close to the devotees is as good as being, friend to the God itself. So he says, may at least be able to see your images, may touch the feet of your devotees, and then who are completely loving to you. So at least bless me with all of that. And then let me, of course, the most important thing here is continue to sing and praise about your names, about your activities, and about all your greatness. May I continue to do that. So please bless me with all of that. So yo yavan yadrusho va tvamiti, comma, kimapi naivava gachami bhuman. So put a in at the end of that line. Naivava gachami bhuman, comma. Next line, at least in Sanskrit, you will have a double na and a. So knock it off. It just becomes a because it's in already went to the previous line. So evan chananya bhavaha. So that is there. Remove it. Visarga comma. Evan chananya bhavaha. Twadanu bhajanam evadriye. If you want to break at that ma. So twadanu bhajanam evadriye chaidya vairin. Chaidya vairin is referring to the one who got rid of the king of Chedi, which is Shishupala. यो ह्याभान् यादृशो वा त्वमिति किमपि नैवावगच्छामि भूमन् एवं चानन्यभावः त्वदनुभजनमेवाद्रिये चैद्यवैरिन्.
यो यावान् यादृशो वात्वमिति किमपि नैवावगच्छामि भूमन् एवं चानन्यभावः त्वदनु भजन मेवात्रिये चैत्यवैरिन्.
Even the first line, the comma is after tvamiti.
Okay. यो यावान् यादृशो वा त्वमिति किमपि नैवावगच्छामि भूमन् एवं चानन्यभावः त्वदनु भजनमेवात्रिये चैत्यवैरिन्.
यो यावान् यादृशो वा त्वमिति किमपि नैवावगच्छामि भूमन् एवाञ्छानन्यभावः त्वदनुभजनमेवाद्रिये चैद्यवैरिन्. यो यावान् यादृशो वा त्वमिति किमपि नैवावगच्छामि भूमन् एवाञ्छानन्यभावः त्वदनुभजनमेवाद्रिये चैद्यवैरिन्.
त्वल लिंगानां त्वदंग्रि प्रिय जन तदसाम, comma, darshana sparshanadihi. So put the visarga at the end of that line, sparshanadihi. Next line on top of bhuyan me, there is a ir that goes away. Bhuyan me tvat prapuja nati nuti guna karmanu kirtyadaropi. That's one word. Ends with a short p at the end. त्वल्लिङ्गानां त्वदङ्घ्रिप्रियजनसदसां दर्शनस्पर्शनादिः भूयान्मे त्वत्प्रपूजा नतिनुतिगुणकर्मानुकीर्त्यादरोऽपि.
त्वल्लिङ्गानां त्वदङ्घ्रिप्रियजन सदसां दर्शनस्पर्शनादिः भूयान्मे त्वत्पूजा नदिनुदि गुणकर्मानु कीर्त्यादरोऽपि.
With the second last line, tvat prapuja.
Here it's tvat puja.
Okay, just change it to prapuja.
Okay. त्वल्लिङ्गानां त्वदङ्घ्रिप्रियजनसदसां दर्शनस्पर्शनादिः भूयान्मे त्वत्प्रपूजा नदिनुदि गुणकर्मानु कीर्त्यादरोऽपि.
त्वल्लिङ्गानां त्वदङ्घ्रिप्रियजनसदसां दर्शनस्पर्शनादिः भूयान्मे त्वत्प्रपूजा नतिनुतिगुणकर्मानुकीर्त्यादरोऽपि. त्वल्लिङ्गानां त्वदङ्घ्रिप्रियजनसदसां दर्शनस्पर्शनादिः भूयान्मे त्वत्प्रपूजानतिनुतिगुणकर्मानुकीर्त्यादरोऽपि.
Yeah. I think that one, if you're not able to say, it's like darshana sparshanaadihi bhuyanme tvat prapuja natinuti guna karmanu kirtyadharopi. It'll land. I think, just up to nuti is guna, you can break it easily. The rest of the part, you cannot break it. Stanza 9. यद्यल्लभ्येत तत्तव समुपहृतं देवदासोऽस्मि तेऽहं त्वद्गेहोन्मार्जनाद्यं भवतु मम मुहुः कर्म निर्माह्यमेव सूर्याग्निब्राह्मणात्मादिषु लसितचतुर्बाहुमाराधये त्वां त्वत्प्रेमार्द्रत्वरूपो मम सततमभिष्यन्ततां भक्तियोगः. Again, most of these are prayers only. So he continues to say that, may I always be like the previous one we said, may I always be worshipping your feet, may I always be singing your greatness, may I always be prostrating to you and talking about your greatness. So here it just continues a little bit more, saying that whatever comes to me, like we say kayena vacha, very similar to this. He says, whatever comes to me, please give me the strength to be able to offer it to you, because I'm like your servant, right? And may always be in your service. And whether that service, like we said, the service could be either you are already talking about God all the time, talking about his activities, or being a servant here. The servant could mean going and doing service, which I know a lot of you do, right? So it's kind of going to the temples and doing service to people's, doing cleaning of the temple. All of that may always kind of continue to do that. And then may I worship you with Chatur Bahu. May I worship you in either the four arms, the form of you in the form of four arms, or the form of you as the sun, or the form of you as an Atman or a Brahman. No matter what form you worship, you may I continue to worship you. And the most important, and so one of this I'm going to say in the 95th also, it says it has to be so much devotion that it should melt your heart. Right? And how that feeling should come will come in the next dashakam, but it should melt my heart. So it's a continuous devotion. So it's not like devotion is taking a break, right? That every time at this point I will pray, at this point I'll not pray. It should be constant devotion, just like how a stream of river flows into the sea. So yadhyal labhyeta tat tat tava. So that you can break into 3 words there. Tat tat tava samupahrutam, comma, Deva dasosmi teham, comma, tvat gehoन्मार्जनाद्यं, comma, bhavatu mama muhuhu. Is there? Put the ich sound. Mama muhuh. Karma nirmayameva. Yadhyallabhyeta tattattava samupahrutam devadasosmi teham tvadgehoन्मार्जनाद्यं bhavatu mama muhuh karma nirmayameva.
यद्यल्लभ्येद तत्तव समुपहृतं देवदासोऽस्मि देहं त्वद्गेहोन्मार्जनाद्यं भवतु मम मुहुः कर्म निर्मायमेव यद्यल्लभ्येद तत्तव समुपहृतं देवदासोऽस्मि देहं त्वद्गेहोन्मार्जनाद्यं भवतु मम मुहुः कर्म निर्मायमेव
यद्यल्लभ्येत्य तत्तव समपहृतं देवदासोऽस्मि तेऽहं त्वद्गेहोन्मार्जनाद्यं भवतु मम मुहुः कर्म निर्मायमेव यद्यल्लभ्येत्य तत्तव समुपहृतं देवदासोऽस्मि तेऽहं त्वद्गेहोन्मार्जनाद्यं भवतु मम मुहुः कर्म निर्मायमेव.
सूर्याग्नि ब्राह्मणात्मादिषु, कम, लसित चतुर बाहुम आराधये त्वां, कम, त्वत् प्रेमार्द्र त्वरूपो, so the dra sound, त्वत् प्रेमार्द्र त्वरूपो, कम, मम सततम, you can break it, that ma, put it in satatam abhishyandataam bhakti yoga. सूर्याग्निब्राह्मणात्मादिषु लसितचतुर्बाहुमाराधये त्वां त्वत्प्रेमार्द्रत्वरूपो मम सततमभिष्यन्दतां भक्तियोगः
सूर्याग्निभ्राम्णात् मादिषु लसितचतुर्बाहुम् आराधये त्वां त्वत्प्रेमार्त्रवरुभो मम सततम् आविश्यन्दतां भक्तियोगः.
Then third line that after Brahmanat Madishu there is a comma, and fourth line after Twarupo.
Okay. Okay. सूर्याग्निभ्राम्णात् मादिषु लसितचतुर्बाहुम् आराधये त्वां त्वत्प्रमोत्रत्वरूपो मम सततम् आविशीयन्दतां भक्तियोगः.
That fourth line, first word, Twat Premadra Twarupo.
त्वत्प्रेमात्वरूपो मम सततम् आविश्यन्दतां भक्तियोगः.
सूर्याग्निब्रह्मणात्मादिषु लसितचतुर्बाहुमाराधये त्वां त्वत्प्रेमार्द्रत्वरूपो मम सततमभिष्यन्दताम् मम सततमभिष्यन्दतां भक्तियोगः.
Padmaguru, that third line, Brahmanat Madishu. You said Brahmana, Brahmanat.
Brahmanat. Okay. सूर्याग्निब्राह्मणात्मादिषु लसितचतुर्बाहुमाराधये त्वां त्वत्प्रेमार्द्रत्वरूपो मम सततमभिष्यन्दतां भक्तियोगः.
Uncertain. Aikyam the dana homa vrata niyama tapas sankhya yoga irdurapam त्वत्संगेनैव गोप्यः किल सुकृतितमा प्रापुरानन्दसान्द्रं भक्तेष्वन्येषु भूयस्वपि बहुमनुषे भक्तिमेव त्वमासां तन्मे त्वद्भक्तिमेव दृढय हरगदान् कृष्णवाताधयेश. So like this chapter pretty much is full of prayers or requests only. He says, see, union aikyam, the union with you could be attained through any means. There's no rule or regulation about it. It could be any methods that you have. You can also attain it through dhanam, through charity, through homam, by performing sacrifices, by vratam, by doing austerities, vows that you take, and then following niyama, following appropriate disciplines and everything. All of that you can do. And this is all described in Sankhya Yoga also. Maybe you've also seen all of that. But he says all of this is not easy. It's easy to say how to do it, but it's extremely hard to actually get there. He says the classic example, he says, why do you want to struggle through all of that? And he says, we have a prime example in this Gopikas who attained intense bliss. They attained extreme happiness and liberation just by pure love to you, which is the easiest thing, which you've seen several times in the past also. So he says there are several devotees of you, Krishna, who have adored you, but there's nobody as great as the Gopikas in terms of devotion and love to you. He says, please bless me also, so that kind of devotion, right? Dradaya haragada, like Tvad bhakti meva dradaya. So that firm devotion and love that Gopikas have, may that also come in me, so I can easily attain you rather than going through all these complicated paths of Sankhya Yoga and everything else. So Aikyam te dana homa vrata niyama tapas Sankhya yogair durapam. Let's continue, comma at the end. Tvat sangenaiva gopyah, comma, khila sukrititama prapur ananda sandram. Aikyam the dana homa vrata niyama tapas sankhya yoga irdurapam tvat sangenaiva gopyah kila sukrititama prapur ananda sandram.
ऐक्यं ते दानहोम वृधनेम तव साङ्ग्ययोगेर्दुरापं त्वत्सङ्गेनैव गोप्यः किल सुकृतितमा प्रापुरानन्दसान्द्रम्. ऐक्यं ते दानहोम वृधनेम तव साङ्ग्ययोगैर्दुरापं त्वत्सङ्गेनैव गोप्यः किल सुकृतितमा Prapuranandasandram.
Within the first line, Homa Vrata, Vra sound, okay?
Okay. Homavrata.
ऐक्यं ते दानहोम व्रतनियम नियमतपस्साङ्ख्यायोगैर्धुरूपं योगैर्धुरापं त्वत्सङ्गेनैव गोप्यः किल सुकृतितमाः प्रापुरानन्दसान्द्रम् ऐक्यं ते दानहोम व्रतनियमत मत ऐक्यं ते दानहोम व्रतनियमत नियमतपस् साङ्ख्ययोगैर्धुरापं त्वत्सङ्गेनैव गोप्यः किल सुकृतितमः पुरानन्दसान्द्रम्
भक्तेष्वन्येषु भूयस्वपि, बहु मनुषे भक्तिमेव त्वमासां, तन्मे त्वद्भक्तिमेव द्रडय हर गदान्, कृष्ण वातालयेश. भक्तेष्वन्येषु भूयस्वपि बहु मनुषे भक्तिमेव त्वमासां तन्मे त्वद्भक्तिमेव द्रडय हर गदान् कृष्ण वातालयेश.
Bhakteshvanyeshu bhuyasvabi बहुमनुषे भक्तिमेव त्वमासां तन्मे त्वद्भक्तिमेव त्रिडय हरगदान् कृष्णवादालयेश. भक्तेष्वन्येषु भूयस्वपि बहुमनुषे भक्तिमे त्वमासां तन्मे त्वद्भक्तिमेव त्रिडय हरगदान् कृष्णवादालयेश.
Again, the last line, Dradaya. Har. Yeah.
Okay.
भक्तेष्वन्येषु भूयस्वपि बहुमनुषे भक्तिमेव त्वमासां तन्मे त्वद्भक्तिमेव दृढय हरगदान् कृष्णवातालयेश. भक्तेष्वन्येषु भूयस्वपि बहुमनुषे भक्तिमेव त्वमासां तन्मे त्वद्भक्तिमेव दृढय हरगदान् कृष्णवातालयेश.
Krishnaya Parabrahmane Namah. Okay, let's switch now. Lata, you can be student, and Vijaya, you can be student. So Dashakam 95 is Kaivalya Siddhi Prakara Varnanam. So Kaivalya Siddhi is like attaining liberation. So this is what is the methods of attaining liberation? How do you get there? Previous one was enlightenment. So we kind of spoke about the difference between getting enlightened and then getting liberated, right? Slightly different ones there. So this is also like all the 90s are a little bit tough chapters only. Stanza 1. आधौ हैरण्यगर्भीं तनुमविकलजीवात्मिकामास्तितस्त्वं जीवत्वं प्राप्य माया गुणगणखचितो वर्तसे विश्वयोने तत्रोद्वृद्धेन सत्त्वेन तु गुणयुगलं भक्तिभावं गतेन छित्त्वा सत्त्वं च हित्वा पुनरनुपहितो वर्तिता हे त्वमेव. Kind of technically speaking, in the first few stanzas, right? It says before this, anything which consists of whatever is manifestable, which is something which is there today, and anything which is unmanifested, not yet manifested. So all of these things, it says, like we saw in Dashakam 5 and everything, did not exist before, and after dissolution will also not exist. But that doesn't mean it was never there. It was all there, right? And then how all these gunas are all in equilibrium at the beginning. There's absolutely nothing that is there. There was no death, there was no liberation, there was no birth, no day, no night, none of that stuff. And only you remained as a supreme bliss. That was the only thing that was there. And then we saw how the Brahmandam got formed, the Andam was formed. Even that Andam remained in that state for a really long time till you went in, right? And then formed the 14 worlds which were actually there. And that was a Virat form, Virat Purusha form that we saw also. So initially it says when everything is stable, when everything is in equilibrium, right? It's all constant. Then the first thing that happens is the gunas, when they start forming, and a little bit we are going back to revision, when the gunas start from when sattva guna is coming, it says at the time everybody thinks they are all part of one universal soul. There is no difference between you, me, any of those things. Everybody is one universal soul. And then what happens is individuality comes, right? Then you start identifying yourself as one. which is different from the Supreme Soul, although you are not, but that individuality comes. And similarly, all these things, passion comes, ignorance comes, all these attributes start coming. So he says, in the material existence, which is kind of where we are, he says the only way is by improving your goodness, by improving your sattva guna. He says you can actually push the other two things down. That's one way. So by becoming more and more good, he says your sattvic nature, sattva guna goes up, and when that goes up, that automatically will push down the rajas and the tamas you have. That is step number one. Then the step number two, if you have to attain the liberation realm, is you have to go beyond the sattvic guna. You should even shed that sattvic guna also. So he says, because the sattvic guna is that identity of I. So he said you have to even completely give that also out. And then by giving completely all of that, or eliminating all of that, eventually I will come and merge with you. So that is kind of technical process of how you go through from how the creation happened and how do you reverse back, right? And we saw some of it in Dasakam 4 also, when we saw the Ashtanga yoga of how do you reverse back and go through the various layers and shed everything. Anyway, he's just kind of talking through that again, saying by that I will identify with you. So Adau Hairanya Garbhim Thanum Avikala Jivatmi Kam Asti Tastvam. So if you want to break it, you can break Thanum Avikala Jivatmikam Asti Tastvam. You can break it that way, but it may be difficult to say. So, Jivatmi Kamasti Tastvam. Better to say it together, comma. Jivatvam Prapya Maya Guna Gana Kachito Vartase Vishwayone. So, both of these lines, there's no pause in between. Adho Hairanya Garbhim Tanumavikala Jivatmikamasthitastvam Jivatvam Prapya Maya Gunaghana Kachito Vartase Vishwayone.
आदौ हैरण्य गर्भीं तनुमविकल जीवात्मिकाम् आश्रितस्त्वं जीवत्वं प्राप्य माया गुणगणकचितो वर्तसे विश्वयोने आदौ हैरण्यगर्भीं तनुम् अविकल जीवात्मिकाम् आश्रितस्त्वं जीवात्वं प्राप्य माया गुणगणकचितो वर्तसे विश्वयोने.
Lata, are you there? You're on mute. Okay, maybe Ram, you can go, Ram.
आदौ हैरण्यगर्भीं तनुमविकलजीवात्मिकामास्थितस्त्वं जीवत्वं प्राप्य माया गुणगणखचितो वर्तसे विश्वयोने आदौ हैरण्यगर्भीं तनुमविकलजीवात्मिकामास्थितस्त्वं जीवत्वं प्राप्य माया गुणगणखचितो वर्तसे विश्वयोने
Tatrod Vriddhena Satvena Tu Guna Yugalam, comma, Bhakti Bhavam Gatena, comma, Chitva Sattvam Cha Hitva, comma, Punar Anupahito. If you want to break it, Punar Anupahito Vartitahe Tvameva. तत्रोद्वृद्धेन सत्त्वेन तु गुणयुगलं भक्तिभावं गतेन छित्त्वा सत्त्वं च हित्वा पुनरनुपहितो वर्तिता हे त्वमेव. Lata, are you back? No, Ram, you go first. I don't know if Lata is back.
तत्रोद्वृद्धेन सत्त्वेन तु गुणयुगलं भक्तिभावं गतेन छित्त्वा सत्त्वं च हित्वा पुनरनुपहितो वर्तिता हे त्वमेव तत्रोद्वृद्धेन सत्त्वेन तु गुणयुगलं भक्तिभावं गतेन चित्वा सत्त्वं च हित्वा पुनरनुपहितो वर्तिता हे त्वमेव
तत्रोद्वृद्धेन सत्त्वेन तु गुणयुगलं भक्तिभावं गतेन चित्वा सत्वं च हित्वा पुनरनुपुहितो वर्तिता हे त्वमेव तत्रोद्रुद्वेन सतवेन तु गुणयुगलं
Satvena, you can see instead of Sattavena, it says Satvena.
सत्वेन
Yeah.
सत्वेन तु गुणयुगलं भक्तिभावं गतेन चित्वा सत्वं च हित्वा पुनरनुपुहितो वर्तिता हे त्वमेव.
And this last line, Punar Anupahito, pass out. I think I heard a poo sound. Punar Anupahito. Okay.
पुनरनुपहितो. Okay, thank you.
Stanza 2. सत्वोन्मेषात् कदाचित् खलु विषयरसे दोषबोधेऽपि भूमन् भूयोऽप्येषु प्रवृत्तिः सतमसि रजसि प्रोद्यते दुर्निवारा चित्तं तावद्गुणाश्च ग्रथितमिह मितः तानि सर्वाणि रोद्धुं तुर्ये त्वय्येक भक्तिः शरणमिति भवान् हंसरूपी न्यगाधीत्. Like I was telling last time, some of these are from the Uddhava Gita, right, which comes in the 11th skandam of Bhagavatam, where Krishna, before he departs, he then gives a similar Gita is like a song, right, that he actually tells Uddhava a lot of things. Right? So a lot of these things are taken from that. So in that, Uddhava then asks Krishna that, I heard that you taught the science of yoga, right, to the Sanaka Muni, Sanaka, Sananda, Sanat Kumara, Sanatana, all of them, you taught it to them, right? And so tell me more about it, right? So they actually inquired about this subject matter from you, about the goal of the yoga and a lot of science of the yoga. Please explain it. At the time, Krishna tells Uddhava that at one point the Sanaka rishis, they were sitting and contemplating, and they say that it's very natural for the minds of people to get attached to sense objects. It's very natural. You cannot stop it. By default, your mind will get attached to something, right? And the moment your mind gets attached to some object, that object then enters and becomes a desire for you now. Now you'll want that object. Then you'll start working towards that object. He says it's a very tight connection between the mind and the object that always happens. So he says, if somebody has to get liberated, how do they overcome this attachment that happens between mind and sense objects? This is what the question the Sanat Kumara said. So they then went to their leader or their father, who is Brahma, and Brahma says, even I cannot give you this answer. He says, because even I have a desire of creation. Brahma has to have a desire of creation, else no creation will happen. She says, even Brahma says, even I cannot tell you that. So then Brahma then prayed, and the Lord came in the form of a Hamsa, came in the form of a swan, and then gave instructions to Brahma, right? And then that's why it's in Hamsa Rupi. So you came in the form of a swan, and then you instructed Brahma on this. And he says it is true. It is very difficult to control the mind. The mind enters into those objects, the object enters into your mind. It all gets convoluted. He says the problem is because the person who's thinking assumes that they are the person who is enjoying it. They are the person who's doing it. So if I like to eat something, if I believe that I am the person who's eating the apple and I am the person who's enjoying the taste of the apple, it's impossible for me to separate out my mind from that sense object. It's not possible at all. It's extremely hard. You cannot separate it out. Naturally, your mind is going to go there, right? He says the important is for you to realize that it is not you. You are not this body. You elevate yourself. And when that intelligence comes, then you'll be able to separate yourself. Now, how that intelligence comes, that is going to, it will talk a little bit more further how to come to that level of intelligence. Just unless one gets that intelligence, it's very difficult to stop your mind, because your mind is always going to get attached to something. Your mind is going to want it, then you're going to like it, you're going to dislike it. You cannot separate it out because you're identifying yourself with that body. That's the message which the Lord in the form of Hamsa gave Brahma. Brahma then told Sanaka and all the rishis. So Satvon Meshat Kadachit Khalu Vishaya Rase, Dosha Bodhepi Bhuman, Huyo Peshu Pravrittis Satamasi Rajasi, Prodhate Durnivara. Satvonmeshat kadhachit khalu vishayarase dosha bhodepi bhuman bhuyopyeshu pravrittis satamasi rajasi prodhate durnivara.
सत्त्वोन्मेषात् कदाचित् खलु विषयरसे दोषबोधेऽपि भूमन् भूयोऽप्येषु प्रवृत्तिः सतमसि रजसि प्रोद्धते दुर्निवारा सत्त्वोन्मेषात् कदाचित् खलु विषयरसे दोषबोधेऽपि भूमन् भूयोऽप्येषु प्रवृत्तिः सतमसि रजसि प्रोद्धते दुर्निवारा
सत्त्वोन्मेषात् कदाचित् खलु विषयरसे दोषबोधेऽपि भूमन् भूयो भूयोऽप्येषु प्रवृत्तिः सतमसि रजसि
Yeah, lost you.
प्रोन्मेष
Sorry, go ahead. We lost you in the last word there, but go ahead.
सत्त्वोन्मेषात् कदाचित् खलु विषयरसि दोषबोधेऽपि भूमन् भूयोऽप्येषु प्रवृत्तिः सतमसि रजसि प्रोधते दुर्निवारा
Chittam tavat gunascha grati tamiha mitaha. So that is there. Remove it. Put a visarga comma mitaha. Tani sarvani rodhum comma turye tvayeka bhaktihi. So that ish that is there. Remove it. Put a visarga comma tvayeka bhaktihi. Sharanamiti bhavan hamsa rupi nyagadit. चित्तं तावद्गुणाश्च ग्रथितमिह मितः तानि सर्वाणि रोद्धुं तुर्ये त्वय्येक भक्तिः शरणमिति भवान् हंसरूपी न्यगाधीत्
चित्तं तावद्गुणाश्च ग्रथितमिह मितः तानि सर्वाणि रोद्धुं तुर्ये त्वय्येकभक्तिः शरणमिति भवान् हंसरूपी न्यगादीत् चित्तं तावद्गुणाश्च ग्रथितमिह मितः तानि सर्वाणि रोद्धुं तुर्ये त्वय्येकभक्तिः शरणमिति भवान् हंसरूपी न्यगादीत्
चित्तं तावत् गुणाश्च ग्रथितमिह तानि सर्वाणि रोद्धुं तूर्ये त्वय्येक भक्तिः शरणुमिति भवान् हंसरूपी न्यगातीत्
Vijay, and the
चित्तं
sorry, third line lamp grati tamiha mitaha. I think you forgot to say that word.
ग्रथितमिह
Like grati tamiha mitaha.
तमिह मितः
Yeah, correct.
चित्तं तावद् गुणाश्च ग्रथितमिह मितस्तानि सर्वाणि रोद्धुं तूर्ये त्वय्येक भक्तिः शरणमिति भवान् हंसरूपी न्यगादीत्
Third line again, that mythas you're saying, right? And we are taking a pause there. So that is becomes a visarga there. So mitaha. Okay.
Could you please repeat one more time that
Yeah.
word?
Chittam tavat gunascha grati tamiha mitaha, comma.
Mitaha, okay.
Comma, then tani sarvani rodhum. Okay, instead of that is, we are putting a visarga. Yeah. Answer.
Thank you.
Sante श्रेयांसि भूयांस्यपि रुचिभिरया कर्मिणां निर्मितानि क्षुद्रानन्दाश्च शान्ता बहुविधगतयः कृष्णदेव्यो भवेयुः त्वं चाचक्यातसख्येन नु महिततमां श्रेयसां भक्तिमेकां त्वद्भक्त्यानन्दतुल्यः खलु विषयजुषां सम्मदः केन वा स्यात्. So again, little bit I was telling last Dashakam, I'll say a little bit of this rituals thing here, right? He says there are a lot of paths which have been laid out, right? Because each one, like the advantage of Santana Dharma is you can pick what your path is. So you can say this is what I like to do, and this is going to get me to liberation, whatever is prescribed. That is all fine. But the challenge that comes, and this goes very nicely in when Narada and Vyasa are having that conversation also. Narada tells Vyasa, you have done so many great things of Vyasa. But I'll tell you what the problem is. You are great, but the people are not that enlightened or elevated, right? So their natural tendency for people is to enjoy, is to get sense pleasures. And what you have done is you've given them a set of prescribed rules. You said that, if you do this, it is good karma that you are actually creating. You're getting punyam. If you do this, you're doing bad karma. You're going to get power. But if you do that bad karma, here is a pariharam you can do to overcome the bad karma. You kind of given people a very clear system of what to do and what benefits to expect. He says the problem with this is if somebody is already mature, then it's okay. But if somebody is not mature, what will they do? They will literally start following your procedure, recommendations. So they will literally just blindly follow it because they believe for every action, they are expecting a certain reaction to happen. So they say, if I go pray to the God, if I go break a coconut, I'm going to get this in result. So they start following that. And what will happen because of that is something doesn't happen, then they believe that breaking the coconut or praying to God is a bad aspect because I did not get what I want. He says people get bound by it, right? He says that is the mistake you ended up doing because it applies. Praying and all this applies, following the Vedic rituals applies if somebody is elevated. But somebody who's not elevated, they'll blindly just follow it. So you know what it was, you end up putting people into this mix of doing things with the expectation of getting something in return. He says that is the problem which was there. So the only way to kind of come out of that is, Krishna also says Uddhava, which Narada also says Vyasa, is the devotion without expecting anything in return is the most glorious of all the paths. There should be absolutely no doubt to that. And he says, plus the enjoyment that comes with being so devoted and falling in love is much better than getting all the sense enjoyments, because that will go off one day. Well, this one will continue. So Santi Shreyamsi Bhuyamsyapi, Ruchi Bhidaya Karminam Nirmitani, Shudranandascha Santa Bahu Vida Gatayah, Krishna Tebyo Bhaveyuhu. Santi Shreyamsi Bhuyamsyapi Ruchi Bhidaya Karminam Nirmitani Shudranandascha Santa Bahu Vida Gatayah, Krishna Tebyo Bhaveyuhu.
Santi Shreyansi Bhuyamsyapi Ruchibhidaya Karminam Nirmitani Kshudranandascha Santa Bahuvidhagatayah Krishnatebhyo Bhaveyuhu. Santi Shreyansi Bhuyamsyapi Ruchibhidaya Karminam Nirmitani Kshudranandascha Santa Bahuvidhagatayah Krishnatebhyo Bhaveyuhu.
Santi Shreyamsi Bhuyamsyapi Ruchibhidaya Karminam Nirmitani Shudranandhascha Santaha Bahuvidagataya Gatayaha Krishna Tebhyo Bhaveyuhu. Santi Shreyamsi Bhuyamsyapi Ruchibhidaya Karminam Nirmitani Shudranandhascha Santaha Bahuvidagatayaha Krishna Tebhyo Bhaveyuhu.
Vijay, on the second line, Santaha, there is no visarga there, okay? Just Santa. And then Bahubida Gatayaha. I'm hearing Gatayaha or okay, just Gatayaha.
Gatayaha, okay. And Krishna Tebhyo Bhaveyuhu, right?
Bhaveyuhu, correct, yeah.
Thank you.
Tvam Chachakyata Sakhye Nanu Mahita Tamam, Shreyasam Bhaktimekam, Tvad Bhaktyananda Tulyaha, Khalu Vishaya Jusham Sammadaha, is there, put the ich sound, Sammadah Kena Vasyat. Tvam Chachakyata Sakhye Nanu Mahita Tamam Shreyasam Bhaktimekam Tvad Bhaktyananda Tulyaha Khalu Vishaya Jusham Sammadah Kena Vasyat.
Tvam Chachakyata Sakhye Nanu Mahita Tamam श्रेयसां भक्तिमेकां त्वद्भक्त्यानन्दतुल्यः खलु विषयजुषां सम्मदः केन वा स्यात् त्वं चाचक्याथ सख्ये ननु महिततमां श्रेयसां भक्तिमेकां त्वद्भक्त्यानन्दतुल्यः खलु विषयजुषां सम्मदः केन वा स्यात्
त्वं चाचक्यात् सख्येन नु महितमां श्रेयसां भक्तिमेकां त्वद्भक्त्यानन्दतुल्यः खलु विषयजुषां सम्मदः केन वा स्यात् त्वां चाचक्यात् सख्येन नु महितमां श्रेयसां भक्तिमेकां त्वद्भक्त्यानन्दतुल्यः खलु विषयजुषां सम्मदः केन वा स्यात्
The third line la mahita tamam. Okay, there's a ta there.
महितमां
Mahita tamam.
महितमां okay
Answer
sorry
for
yeah
त्वद्भक्त्या तुष्टबुद्धेः सुखमिह चरतो विच्युताशस्य चाशाः सर्वास्युः सौख्यमय्यः सलिलकुहरगस्येव तोयैकमय्यः सोऽयं कल्विन्द्रलोकं कमलजभवनं योगसिद्धिश्च हृद्याः नाकाङ्क्षत्येतदास्तां स्वयमनुपतिते मोक्षसौख्येऽप्यनीहः. So it's a couple of examples, right? He says an aquatic creature like a fish, when it is at the bottom of the ocean, right? Wherever the fish goes, the fish finds water because naturally it's at the bottom of the ocean. So wherever it goes, it will find water and it will only go to places where there's water, which is expected. So similarly, when you think of a really rich person, wherever the rich person goes, he makes sure that his standard of comfort is maintained, right? No matter which city or is traveling or staying home, he always makes sure that is there. He says because they make sure it is there, right? It doesn't naturally happen. He says similarly, happiness, don't think of happiness as something that has to happen from outside. Just happiness is something that you can get very easily, and he describes the 3-4 things. He says the person who does not desire anything in this world, step number 1, that itself is very hard, but he says who doesn't desire anything in this world, the one who has a control of his senses, number 2. Third is no matter what the situation is, they are kind of equanimous, right? They don't change their mind or emotions or anything depending on the situation. And who's just satisfied in just in being devoted to me, just to Krishna. This is one one who follows these 4 things. It says happiness is going to be there every single time. You don't have to worry about it if you just follow these 4 things. That's the simplest method of happiness, he's saying. Just like how a fish finds water everywhere, this person who follows these 4 things will find happiness every single place. And the person who is fully satisfied in me, the definition of that is that person should not say, by praying to Krishna, I need to go to the Devaloka. I need to actually attain liberation. I need to get all this wealth on this earth. I know I need to have all of these things. You should not desire any of these things. You should only desire devotion to the Lord. He says that is the definition of that, right? So person who does that, they will always find happiness, and there should be absolutely no doubt about this. And again, the other thing he's kind of saying also here, again, this is all part of Krishna's instructions to Uddhava, right? He says just the, like because it's poetic, right? Sanskrit. So he kind of says that dust from the feet of my greatest of devotees is where I reside. Krishna is saying that is where I am. So he says, if you want to reach me, you go look for the greatest of my devotees, and in their feet dust I am residing. So there should be no doubt about it. So again, the satsangam is very important, right? Hanging around the same people who have the similar nature is also extremely important, because that's the way you kind of get there. And by doing that, you will actually, liberation will automatically come to the person. There's no doubt about it. So tvad bhaktya tushta buddhehe, comma, sukhamiha charato vicyutashasya chashaha, comma, sarvaha, put a is, syuhu, put a is again, saukyamayaha, comma, salila kuhara gasyeva तोयैकमय्यः त्वद्भक्त्या तुष्टबुद्धेः सुखमिह चरतो विच्युताशस्य चाशाः सर्वास्युः सौख्यमय्यः सलिलकुहरगस्येव तोयैकमय्यः
त्वद्भक्त्या तुष्टबुद्धेः सुखमिह चरतो विच्युताशस्य चाशाः सर्वास्युः सौख्यमय्यः सलिलकुहरगस्येव तोयैकमय्यः त्वद्भक्त्या तुष्टबुद्धेः सुखमिह चरतो विच्युताशस्य चाशाः सर्वास्युः सौख्यमय्यः सलिलकुहरगस्येव तोयैकमय्यः राजेश डौट अंग सर्वाः स्युसौख्यवा இல்ல सर्वा
and
स्युसौख्यमय्यः
both places the is will come sarvasyus
இங்க வந்து சர்வாஹ ஸ்யுஸ் அப்படின்னு இருக்கு விசர்காவும் இருக்கு
okay, that's okay. So உங்களுக்கு வந்து that is already added to the second one, right? So in my book, for example, it says sarvaha syuhu saukyamayaha. Okay.
same.
So wherever the visarga is there, you're putting is to joins, it becomes sarvas syus saukyamayaha.
Okay.
Oh, good, Vijay. Sorry.
त्वद्भक्त्या तुष्टबुद्धेः सुखमिह चरतो विच्युताशस्य चाशाः सर्वास्युः सौख्यमय्याः सलिलकुहरगस्येव त्वयैकमय्यः
That last word, thoyaikamyah.
तोयैकमय्यः. Sorry. त्वद्भक्त्या तुष्टबुद्धेः सुखमिह चरतो विच्युताशस्य चाशाः सर्वास्युः सौख्यमय्याः सलिलकुहरगस्येव त्वयैकमय्याः
Toyaikamyah.
तोयैकमय्याः
Mayah.
तोयैकमय्यः.
See that Mayaha is also coming in that earlier part of that sentence, right? Where you said Saukyamayaha. Okay, so same word, Saukyamayaha. Same Toyekamayaha. Soyam Khalvindra Lokam Kamalaja Bhavanam, comma, Yoga Siddhisha Hridyaha Na Kankshatyeta Dhastam. So this word you cannot break it. So Na Kang ing sound. Na Kankshatyeta Dhastam, comma, Swayam Anupatite Moksha Saukyepya Nihaha. Sohyam Khalvindralokam Kamalaja Bhavanam Yoga Siddhisha Hridyaha Na Kankshatyeta Dhastam Swayam Anupatite Moksha Saukyepya Nihaha.
सोऽयं खल्विन्द्रलोकं कमलजभवनं योगसिद्धिश्च हृद्याः नाकाङ्क्षत्येतदास्तां स्वयमनुपतिते मोक्षसौख्येऽप्यनीहः सोऽयं खल्विन्द्रलोकं कमलजभवनं योगसिद्धिश्च हृद्याः नाकाङ्क्षत्येतदास्तां स्वयमनुपतिते मोक्षसौख्येऽप्यनीहः
सोऽयं कल्विन्द्रलोकं कमलजभवनं योगसिद्धिश्च हृद्याः नाकाङ्क्षयेतधास्तां स्वयमनुपतिते मोक्षसौख्येऽप्यनीहाः सोऽयं खलविन्द्रलोकं कमलजभवनं योगसिद्धेश्च हृदयाः नाकाङ्क्षत्येतधास्तां स्वयमनुपतिते मोक्षसौख्येऽप्यनीहाः.
Do one more stanza and stop today. त्वद्भक्तो भाद्यमानोऽपि च विषयरसैरिन्द्रिया शान्तिहेतोः भक्त्यैवाक्रम्यमाणैः पुनरपि खलु तैर्दुर्बलैर्नाभिजय्यः सप्तार्चिर्दीपितार्चिर्दहति किल यथा भूरिदारुप्रपञ्चं त्वद्भक्त्योगे तथैव प्रदहति दुरितं दुर्मदः क्वेन्द्रियाणाम्. We talked earlier about, the person who doesn't want anything, who doesn't, have any, who's always devoted, only wants to, the desires Krishna or the Lord. He says that's a person who's always going to be happy, right? So that person, it also says, also has a better control over the senses. Now, nobody is perfect, but here even Krishna is telling Uddhava very clearly that even if a devotee has not fully control over their senses, as long as they're fully devoted to me, he may still get harassed by material desires. That will always going to happen till he reaches a particular point. But he says that is different from getting conquered over by material desires, because then you're surrendering to those material desires. So these things are always going to keep coming. They may not completely go away, but they are not going to be a slave to the material desires because they're constantly devoted to me. And even if such a devotee, a person who's constantly devoted to me, falls prey to those material desires, whatever that desire may be, right? They succumb to it and then they fall. He says, and they commit sins because of those material desires. Don't worry, because they've completely surrendered to me, that devotion is going to burn off all the sins. So they should not be worrying about the sins. As long as they're constantly devoted to me, accidents may happen here and there. They don't worry about it. I don't know. This is just like how, like we spoke in the 93rd Dashakam, right? Whatever you throw into the fire, it just burns everything away. Similarly, he says devotion is like that fire. If you're constantly devoted, he said you throw anything into it, some sins accidentally happen. As long as you're completely devoted, then it will burn away those sins. They should not, So none of these senses does not stand any chance against the strength of devotion. That's what Krishna continues to say again and again, is be completely devoted to me. Don't worry about any other things that will happen on the side. So tvat bhakto badhyamano picha, comma,
Madhyamanopi cha, kama, Vishaya.
I'm hearing the echoes up there. Yeah. Badhyamano picha Vishaya Rasair, so that you can break at that point if you want to, it's easier. Vishaya Rasair Indriya Shanti. Indriya Shanti Hetoho. So put a visarga and comma end of that line. Next line on top of that bha, there is a ir that goes away. Bhaktyaiva kramya manaihi, one word, comma, punarapi khalu tair durbalair nabhijayah. त्वद्भक्तो बाध्यमानोऽपि च विषयरसैरिन्द्रिया शान्तिहेतोः भक्त्यैवाक्रम्यमाणैः पुनरपि खलु तैर्दुर्बलैर्नाभिजय्यः.
त्वद्भक्तो बाध्यमानोऽपि च विषयरसैरिन्द्रिया शान्तिहेतोः भक्त्यैवाक्रम्यमाणैः पुनरपि खलु तैर्दुर्बलैर्नाभिजय्यः. त्वद्भक्तो बाध्यमानोऽपि च विषयरसैरिन्द्रिया शान्तिहेतोः भक्त्यैवाक्रम्यमाणैः पुनरपि खलु तैर्दुर्बलैर्नाभिजय्यः.
Tvadbhakto bhadyamanopi cha vishayarasaihi indriya shantihi hetoho bhaktyaivakramyamanaiः punarapi khalu tairdurbalaiर्नाभिजय्यः. त्वद्भक्तो भाद्यमानोऽपि च विषयरसैः इन्द्रिया शान्तिहेतोः भक्त्यैवाक्रमय्यमानैः पुनरपि खलु तैर्दुर्बलैर्नाभिजायः जयः
And the previous,
नाभिजयः.
yeah, the first line, right? Vishaya, if you have rasaihi, if you have a visarga there, then you replace it with a ra. So it becomes Vishaya rasair indriya.
Okay. Vishayarasair indriya. Okay.
Correct. Okay.
So there is no Vishayarasaihi.
I mean, a Vishaya rasaihi, if you have it, then it's Vishaya rasair, the ra becomes a ir, and that's why the visarga is coming there. But if you have visarga, because we're saying it continuously, you don't have to say the visarga. The ir becomes the joining letter, right? So Vishaya rasair indriya.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Vishayarasair indriya.
Saptarchir Deepitarchir Dahati Killer. Some books have Yatha, some books have Tatha. So we're going to change it to Yatha. So we have Tatha, then change it. Kila Yatha, comma. Bhuri Daru Prapancham, comma. Tvat Bhaktyoge Tathaiva Pradahati Duritam, comma. Durmadaha, put a ich sound. Durmadah Kvendriyanam. Saptarchir Deepitarchir Dahati Kila Yatha Bhuridaru Prapancham Twadbhaktyoge Tataiva Pradahati Duritam Durmadah Kvendriyanam.
सप्तार्चिर्दीपितार्चिर्दहति किल यथा भूरिदारुप्रपञ्चम् त्वद्भक्त्योगे तथैव प्रदहति दुरितं दुर्मदह्वेन्द्रियाणाम् सप्तार्चिर्दीपितार्चिर्दहति किल यथा भूरिदारुप्रपञ्चम् त्वद्भक्त्योगे तथैव प्रदहति दुरितं दुर्मदह्वेन्द्रियाणाम्
सप्तार्चिर्दीप्तार्चिर्दहति किल यथा भूरिधारो प्रपञ्चम् त्वद्भक्त्ययोगे तथैव प्रदति दुरितं दुर्मदक्वेन्द्रियाणाम् सप्तार्चिर्दीप्तार्चिर्दहति किल यथा भूरिधारो प्रपञ्चम् त्वद्भक्त्ययोगे तथैव प्रदति दुरितं दुर्मदक्वेन्द्रियाणाम्.
Which is the first third line. Deepitarchir.
Deepitarchir.
Yeah. And then the third last line, Pradahati Duritam.
Pradahati. Okay.
Okay. Shri Krishnaya Parabrahmane Namaha. In the class here today. Chandranandhavabodhatmakamanupamitam kaladheshavadebhyam nirmuktam nityamuktam nigamashata sahasrena nirbhasyamanam aspashtam drishtamatre punarurupurushartatmakam brahmatattvam tattavadbhati sakshat gurupavanapure hanta bhagyam jananam कायेन वाचा मनसेन्द्रियैर्वा बुद्ध्यात्मना वा प्रकृते स्वभावात् करोमि यत् सकलं परस्मै नारायणायेति समर्पयामि. Thank you, everyone. I think we'll just need 2 more classes. I think next class we'll finish 95 and then almost 96, and then we'll have leftover of 96 and 99, right? That should complete it. So I think 2 classes will be done. And then
Thank you very much.
The link for the Lemon Parayanam, whoever has not registered, please do that as well. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rajesh.
Bye.